Alright, hey everybody, so what do you do when you're trying to do a valve adjustment and it's super hot? We get a giant fan, we just blow air, or blow cold air on top of the the valve train to cool it down. When customer drives it, the engine's super hot, and yeah, just let it run here for like 15-20 minutes until you can like put your hand on it, right? And it's not hot, but technically it just has to be less than 38 degrees Celsius as what shop manual says. And yeah, and then you just do your valve adjustment. So all right, so once it's nice and cool, perfect tool for the job is this thing right here. And then I just put the fan back to help cool me off because it's super hot. It's just like down on the floor over there. So yeah, doing valve adjustments. All right, so that was me at work. This is gonna be me at home, and I'm gonna take you through on how I do my my valve adjustments. So what you want is a cold engine. Let it sit overnight and let it cool down. Or shop manual says as long as it's below 38 degrees Celsius, or for most of you 100 degrees Fahrenheit, that is still acceptable. You can still do your valve adjustment at that temperature as well. So what you want to do is get yourself a good 19 millimeter socket. That's just going to go onto your crank bolt. There's a little slot that you can go through the cover in there. Get yourself an extension. You might also want to turn your wheel all the way to the passenger side, and that way you can access it without taking the wheels out. And yeah, what I'm going to do is start taking the air box out, right, and then just work my way here, or work my way to the from right to left. And yeah, once I get the upper intake manifold off, you can take the valve cover. So what you probably want to get is if you want, you can get a throttle body gasket. It does have a rubber gasket. I usually just reuse it, but if your valve cover is leaking, it's the perfect time to do your valve cover gasket. So I actually got myself a valve cover gasket to replace it, because it looks like over there it's kind of leaking a little bit. So, or whoever did the oil change previously, they spilt it everywhere and got it all over the place. So yeah, so I'm gonna start taking the air box out, and I'll bring you back. All right, so when you get the air box out, there are 4 bolts holding the throttle body. They're all 12 mil. So there's one here, one there, and then 2 more on that side. Disconnect the connector for the purge valve. There's this harness up here. There's a, you just pull it out, held in by a clip, and then it slides off of that, and that can just come right off. You can disconnect the map sensor that's up here, right? Just let it hang back there, and yeah, just remove all the bolts for this throttle body. All right, so next thing you want to do is disconnect this vacuum line. This is just for your brake booster. And next thing you want to do is get these 12 millimeter bolts off. They are attached to these plates. There's one on top, and then there's one on the bottom on the backside. They just sandwich the lower and the upper intake manifold together. So let's I'll take these off first, and I'll bring you back. So I got everything off. So what I do is I like to keep the bolts with the brackets together, so that way you don't lose anything. There's also one more bolt, 10 mil, that goes back here. So once I take this off, there's that little nub there that goes onto that, and it's just a 10 mil, right? But yeah, super easy to take off. Doesn't take very long, maybe like 10-15 minutes. And yeah, so once you have everything off, if you have a 2009 and up, where the engine kind of sits further back and you have to take the upper cowl and everything off to do your spark plugs, it's also a perfect time to do your spark plugs once you take the upper intake manifold off and the valve cover, because you can access their spark plugs without having to take off the cowl. So yeah, if you have a 2009 and up Honda Fit, I think 2015 is when they came out with the Earth Dream engine. So yeah, so next thing you want to do, there's a bracket here. You can just loosen it. You don't have to take it off all the way. That way you're able to take the valve cover off. So I just got a bunch of 10 mils that go around, and I'll just take that off and see. All right, so I got all the bolts out. Yeah, the throttle body doesn't look that bad. A lot of times when I'm doing this, the throttle body is caked and it's like super black, so I always just clean it while I'm doing this. But anyways, I got everything loose. This bracket's loose. Just take the valve cover off. Just gonna come right up. What am I stuck on? There we go. Let me see if I can get it one-handed. That looks really clean, actually. Oh yeah, somebody's been here. Changed the valve cover gasket. The valve cover gasket's blue, so somebody's changed it. But it looks super clean, which is it's a good thing. Yeah. How's the camshaft? The camshaft looks really good too. I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, everything's really clean. So this engine's had pretty good oil changes. But anyway, so back to the valve adjustment. What you want to do is on this cam sprocket right up here. Let me see if I can get a better angle. All right, so as I was saying, so on your cam sprocket, there's going to be a number and there's a line. So there's a number right there and it says 2. I don't know how well that shows up. And then there's a line. That line is supposed to line up with this part of the head. And so if you do this enough, you should also remember the firing order on all the 4 cylinders. Firing order is 1, 3, 4, 2. So after the 2, it should be 1, or it's going to say up. So if I rotate it, it'll say up, which indicates cylinder 1. And there it is. Yep. So that's lined up. That's cylinder 1. You can also make sure that these rocker arms are loose. You can see it here. Yeah. So yeah. So after you finish adjusting your cylinder 1, the next cylinder will be 3, which will be those ones over there. But yeah, let me grab my feeler gauges, 10 mil and a pocket screwdriver. You don't necessarily have to have that special tool to adjust your valves. You can just, use a 10 mil wrench and a pocket screwdriver. So, right, so the spec for the intake side is going to be 0.15 millimeters to 0.19 millimeters. So I just go in between and just pick the 0.18, right? And then your exhaust is going to be 0.26 to 0.30 millimeters. So I'm just going to go in between and choose 0.28 or 0.279, close enough. Right, so I'm just going to show you how I adjust it. So I probably do it differently than how other people do it. Some people do it by feeling the drag. How I do it is I move this rocker arm up and down and see how much play is in it with the feeler gauge in it. So I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know how well that comes up on the camera, but you can hear there is play with the feeler gauge in there. So what I do is I will adjust it until I feel no play, but at the same time the feeler gauge moves in and out easily, and I call that adjusted. So make your own decisions and adjust how you feel like you want to do it. But that's how I've always been doing it, and yeah, I never have any issues with it. And all it is just you're just taking up the slack in the rocker arm when you're adjusting the valves. So yeah, just as long as it's not too tight or too loose. If it's too tight, you might get what do you call it? You might get misfires. And then if you're too loose, it might be noisy. Or, in certain cases, you can also get rich and lean codes. All right, so setting you up guys here. I got my 10 mil and a pocket screwdriver. So you don't need anything too fancy, just simple hand tools. So just crack it loose. It can be pretty tight sometimes. All right. I spin it down. Tighten it. There's really little play now, but this feeler gauge still moves freely. See if I can do a little bit more. Yeah. So hardly any play. There's barely any left. And the feeler gauge still moves freely. And my battery's dying, so I gotta change the battery. All right, so I just want to show you this. This one is super loose. This is on the exhaust side. I'm using the 0.28 millimeter feeler gauge. And let me show you how much play there is in this one. Look. Let's get closer. That is a lot of play. So it's super loose. So we got to tighten that up. So yeah, somebody definitely changed the valve cover gaskets before on this thing because it has the blue aftermarket one. Here's the OEM one, and if you want to know the part number, it's right there. So yeah. So once when you finish all your valve adjustment, just make sure you put a little bit of silicone on there and right here, because that's where the timing cover meets the head, and they're not usually you know, the same height, so you might just to prevent leaks. That's why you put silicone there. And yeah, everything else, just give everything a good clean before you put that new valve cover gasket on. And yeah, on 4 cylinders, you can do it pretty quickly, but on the V6s, a little bit more difficult. What I do on the V6s, especially on like the Odysseys, where you can't really see anything back there, I use a old side mirror, and yeah, when you get the hang of it, everything's just reversed when you're when you're doing the valve adjustments back there. But it might take a little bit longer, but yeah, it is doable. But the ones that you want to really do is on the Honda Accord V6s, because they're so much easier. You can see everything back there. But yeah, anyways, I hope you liked the video. I'm just gonna put everything back together, and yeah, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.